This is the first of 3 episodes of a conversation Ryan, Kayla, and I had with our friend Pam Parish. We talked about Pam and her husband Steve and their family, their founding and involvement with Connections Homes, and Pam's books. In this episode, we talk about how she and Steve came into the foster care system and grew their family through adopting from foster care. Greetings and salutations, and welcome to another episode of the Empowered Parent Podcast. Joining me once again are Ryan and Kayla North. Hi, guys.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
And joining us via the miracle of technology from Atlanta is our friend Pam Parish. How are you, Pam?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
We're good.
So good to talk to you, Pam.
Yes, fantastic.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad to be with you guys.
For those who may not be familiar with Pam, Pam is the founder of Connection Homes, which is based in Atlanta, and they seek to impact the lives of young adults aging out of foster care or who are homeless or just don't have any family. She and her husband Steve are the parents of 8 young adult daughters and 3 sons-in-law, and one of their daughters came to them through birth, and the other 7 through the gift of foster care and adoption. They're also Pops and Nana to 4 adorable grandchildren, and I have to say that I like Pops as the name for Grandpa. I think that's kind of how I'm leaning, you know.
Or maybe Big Poppy.
Big Poppy. I could do that too. Sure. Yeah. So tell
I
Steve.
actually know a Big Poppy.
Oh, there you go.
That's
That's awesome.
name. I do.
So tell Steve good going there with the Pops.
I'll relay that message.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so can I just comment on Pam's bio there?
Sure.
When I realized that she had 8 children, it's one of those things that, like we have some friends who they're still in their 30s, but they have 3 grandkids because of the age of the kiddos when they adopted them.
Right.
But for those of you who've never seen Pam face to face, she at most looks 30 years old.
Oh, whatever. You know, most women don't say their age, but I have to all the time because people say that about me. I'm 46 years old, and I've been married for 27 years.
Yeah, that was the other thing when you told me on when we were kind of doing the run of the family the other night when we had dinner together in Georgia with other people there. It wasn't like Pam and I had dinner together, that's what I'm saying. And you kind of did the rundown of how old your kids were and then how long you guys had been married. And I'm like, are you from do they let people get married at age 5 in Georgia?
No. Let's be clear. I'm from Kentucky.
That makes sense.
That makes it so much better now, right?
And I met my husband at Walmart. So,
That's awesome.
the story just gets better.
That does get better. Oh, my gracious.
Yeah, okay, so could we just stay in Kentucky for just a minute, right? So if you've never heard Stephen Curtis Chapman tell the story of he and Mary Beth meeting, they're both from Paducah, Kentucky. And Stephen.
I'm sorry, that's Paducah.
I'm sorry, I wasn't born in America. I didn't know. And so Stephen Curtis Chapman meets a young woman named Mary Beth Chapman. He's like, yeah, we're both Chapmans. You didn't even have to change your name or anything when we got married.
Oh, gosh.
It's like, you know what? I don't want to offend any of the listeners who are from Kentucky, but Stephen said only in Kentucky.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we got married at 19. We're from Kentucky. It's what you do.
Wow.
Were there family members that said, why do you wait so long?
No, we actually did have a few say, are you sure? But it all worked out.
Oh, I love that. Okay,
I would hope 27 years later that it did indeed work out. So
that's probably a good, healthy indicator of success.
So you said, we were talking before the show, you said you're empty nesters again. So all your kids are out of the house. So tell me, I can't remember how old your kiddos are. So what's the age range now?
Yeah, they're between the ages of 22 and 26 right now.
Okay. Wowzer.
I know.
22 and 26. And there are 8 of them in that range. I mean, the teenage years must have been absolutely insane.
Oh, my husband was totally outnumbered. Yes. We had 6. The most we've had at home at one point was 6.
Oh, my goodness.
But 6 teenagers.
Yeah. And teenage girls.
Yeah, so old girls.
Yes. I mean, there were years that there wasn't a single day in our home that there wasn't tears.
I can imagine. That's a lot of hormones going on there.
It is.
and
It is a lot of hormones.
There were probably years when you thought your husband didn't live at home anymore because he was just like hiding in his bedroom with his headphones on.
He did have an office in the basement.
Oh my!
But
the
he had a
locked
lot
door.
of. You can't see me doing this, but I'm making air quotes. He did have a lot of work to do.
I can only imagine.
I was about to say let's baptize this conversation, and Kayla says I can
only imagine.
Well done, wife. Well
Thank
done.
you. It's like we can read each other's minds. I had no idea you were going to say
Yeah,
that.
we've only been married 17 years, and we're already telepathically. Isn't that weird, though? I mean, just talking about marriage for a second. That the longer that you are married to somebody, how you start thinking the same.
Well, is it like
Yeah,
kind of the
people
point?
say that, but it's not true for us.
Oh,
What?
really?
No,
We
no,
like-
we're polar opposites.
Oh, how funny. See, I mean, I think Ryan and I are different in a lot of ways, but I think we know what the other one's going to say. Like we finish each other's sentences, or I'll call him and he's like, I literally had the phone in my hand to call you. And I'm like, that's weird.
It's not weird. It's
Cute.
Sweet. It's beautiful.
Oh,
Thank you for awing.
I was going to say divine intervention, but that just didn't seem right either.
Oh goodness. So tell us, like, can you just tell us a little bit about how your family was formed, right? How all these kiddos came to your house? Because, our kids, most of our kids came to us. Well, all of our kids came home before the age of 5. But yours were a little later on. They were a little older when they came to you.
right. So we have one daughter that came to us at birth, and when she was 11 is when we moved to Georgia from North Carolina. And I, before that time, did not know that you could adopt out of foster care. I mean, I probably had all of the same stereotypical ideas of what foster care was. And I was watching PBS one day, and they were doing a special on Heart Gallery, the group of photographers who take pictures for free of kids who are available for adoption through foster care. And that's the first time that I realized that you could adopt an older child. And we had thought about adoption before because medically we couldn't have any more children. And in our mind, adoption was international. It took, 2 years or more. And at the time that my daughter was, 11 back to 5, I was a corporate executive, and our CEO literally said your hours are 8 to faint. So that we were,
wow.
yes, that's a
Youch.
literal quote. So that we really just didn't have time to go through the process. And then she was 11, and the thought of going back to diapers or to a toddler, just we had kind of put it to the side and said, this is never going to be part of our story.
Yeah.
And then we learned about kids in foster care who needed permanency and needed permanent homes. And literally, I walked out to the garage and I told my husband, I was like, you're not going to believe what I just found out. And he said, sign us up. So we went, we were going to be
really
one
that
and
easy.
done.
Yeah,
It was really that easy. Yes.
That's exactly how it happened in our family, man. Kayla said, well, let's foster. I said, sign us up.
No, it's not how that happened.
You realize your husband is now, like everybody who's listening to this is going, that you are married to some mythical creature.
You know what's so funny is that my husband, people always think because I'm the one that's out there, I'm the voice, that I am the one that has driven these decisions in our family, but I am not the one who has driven these decisions in our family. My husband is the one that has said yes first in every case.
Wow. That's awesome.
With the exception of that first one that I went to him. Every case after that, for 6 more daughters, my husband is the one that has advocated and said yes.
Wow. That's awesome.
So he is a friend of ours calls him Saint Steve, and he's really not. He hates that. If you ever met him, you would know that he absolutely hates it. I think it's hilarious. But yeah, I mean, he just has such a heart of compassion. I remember when probably our 5th daughter the question was whether or not she could come to our house. And I remember he just looked at me and he said, I would rather give somebody a corner in our house than let them live without family.
I love that.
That's a good quote.
Yeah. So, that's where we started, is there. Yeah. And we were going to be one and done. I mean, we literally had no intention of growing our family in this way. But, when God becomes when God takes a hold of your story, things happen. Mountains move.
Yeah.
And I got involved at our adoption agency, which was Bethany Christian Services, locally in Atlanta. And I started, working with them to do support groups. I taught the state impact training for Bethany to train foster parents. And in the process of that, I got to know a couple who were thinking about adopting a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
They were having a lot of issues, teenage issues. And a lot of it was because they were way older and they just did not understand Facebook. They just didn't understand
all the technology.
All the technology and everything. So anyway, fast forward a few months later, and I was on the phone with our case manager, just talking probably about a class that we had coming up that we were going to teach. And I asked about this family. And she said they disrupted. And I said, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to that girl? And she was like, we don't know. She's about to turn 16 and we're just not sure. So I told my husband the story. I hung up the phone later on that evening. We were just sitting and talking. And I shared with him the conversation I'd had that morning. And he said, call Suzanne. That was the name of our case manager. He said, call Suzanne and tell her we'll take her. And literally, it caught me totally off guard because there was no plans.
Yeah, you were just relaying a story to him.
I was relaying a story.
Making a plan.
Or were you?
So we did. We called her, and 2 weeks later, I mean, the stereotypical foster care story happened. We met her on our front porch with a cardboard box of her belongings.
Wow.
And so she became our third daughter, her second through adoption. And then it's a long story, but they started bringing each other home. And
that's funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we adopted. The rest of our girls really came into our family after the age of 18.
Wow.
Several through disrupted adoptions, a couple through homelessness, and one from aging out of foster care.
Wow.
So that's how our family developed, from 1 to 8. And now we've got 3 sons-in-laws and 4 grandchildren.
Wow.
And if I remember correctly, and if I'm remembering incorrectly, I'm sure we can just have this edited out. But if I remember correctly, Christmas is at your house, right?
Yes.
With everybody.
Everybody. Christmas is a big deal for us.
Yeah.
We make a huge deal out of Christmas. I mean, there's presents, there's matching pajamas. I buy a children's book every year for all of my kids, and I write a special note for them for the year, and I read it out loud, and then before we open presents. And it's just, we've got a lot of little built-in traditions, and it's just, for me, traditions has been something that's really bonded us as a family.
Yeah.
And you have, from 2006 to 2016, our family grew from having 1 daughter to 8. That's a 10-year time period. And to mesh all of those personalities and all those different backgrounds, you have to have a common thread throughout the year. And our common thread is tradition. So from family dinners to taco nights to, traditional Thanksgiving dinner to the Christmas holidays. We buy special ornaments for the tree for each girl's. So baking traditions in, whatever that looks like for your family, is one of those bonding experiences that, now that I have 3 daughters that are married, I'm watching them implement those in their own lives, in their own homes, like the decorations, because I would buy 2 ornaments that matched. And when they moved out, I gave them their set of the ornaments, and watching our daughter put her ornaments on her tree and be so proud because it looked like our tree at home. And then, you know, our other daughter who's got the babies, watching her continue those traditions with her kids. I just realized that it's really those ties that bind in a family.
Yeah, so it's interesting to listen to you talk about traditions and the ties that bind. When I was growing up, my dad's parents lived not too far from us. My grandmother, my mom's side, lived many hours away. And so we used to go over to my dad's parents for lunch every Sunday. And so when we got married, we thought, well, we'd keep that tradition going. And then we picked a night that we do that with Kayla's parents as well. And you know, when we didn't have any children, I'll be honest with you, there was a high percentage of the time that I was like, oh, do we have to go and have lunch or dinner with the parents? Because I was just like, it was just one extra thing, it felt like to me. But now that we have children, to watch the children want to go and see their grandparents and enjoy being around the grandparents and watching our parents grandparent our kids is just fun for us. And it has been, you know, in a lot of ways, some of the struggles that we've had with our parents over the years, you know, because you bring your baggage from your childhood unresolved to it, right? And so, I mean, so it's allowed us to really kind of view our parents in a different light than we may have viewed them 15 years ago. And it's allowed us to have a lot more grace and compassion for them, and understanding why they do things, and understanding why we do things, watching them do things. So there's, you know, there's a lot of positive that comes out of that in terms of connecting us to our own stories. Participating in those traditions, because now I don't actually feel like I always participate in the traditions. Now I sometimes feel like I watch my children participate in the traditions,
right?
Which is actually good for me, because then the tradition tends to make maybe a little bit more sense when I can watch it instead of be active in it. But you were talking about Christmas. We were talking about Christmas originally. And I remember one time early on in our marriage, we would try to do all of the family traditions and just not try to make some of our own and mod some of them. And I remember one time we got back because we opened presents at midnight still then on my side of the family, and then went the next day to her side of the family. And I'll never forget this. We left my parents' house at like 1 a.m., brought everybody home, put them to bed, and then we started, and we lived about 30 minutes from my folks back then. Yeah. And we started wrapping the kids' presents. And this is also before we had sensible traditions surrounding gifts at Christmas time. And I remember we probably, 4:30 or 5 a.m. we're done, because we had to wrap her parents, her side of the family's presents, our kids' presents, and then we had to wrap each other's presents because we had done no pre-wrapping. And we went to bed at 5 a.m. that morning. You know who's awake at 6 o'clock on Christmas morning?
Children.
Oh, I know, the kids.
Oh my gosh, I was so miserable that day. It's like the worst Christmas ever in my memory, because I just could not enjoy anything. I was so tired. But I'm happy to report that we pre-wrap as we buy. And Christmas 2017, we probably, on Christmas Eve, had to spend 30 minutes wrapping a few things for the morning for the children.
Yeah.
So you do get wiser as you get older, is maybe the point of all of that.
Yes, I start Christmas shopping in July.
Oh my gosh. I wish that I was that prepared and organized. I did do some Christmas shopping last summer, and by the time I gave it to the girls, I found those little blankets that look like mermaid tails. Have you seen those?
Yes.
And I thought, oh, they're going to love these. They're going to think they're so cool. And by the time Christmas came around, they were like, that's okay. Like they had outgrown their love of mermaids. And I was like, I'm never buying stuff that early again. Because they were like having this like love of mermaids over the summer. And I was like, oh, they'll think this is so fun. But by Christmas, they'd just totally outgrown that.
Well, it's almost easier.
Yeah, I've totally experienced that buying this early.
Oh, but I do love traditions. And I think it's fun to... I love that you've tied that in, especially knowing that many of your girls came home as adults, you know, in the eyes of everybody. And it could have been really easy to be like, well, now you're an adult, so you have a place to come, but we're not going to do all those, you know, traditions. But you've really like made that a point of connection. And I love that, because I do think that traditions, kids love them. And I think as adults, we love them too. And sometimes we forget just how much those mean to, our children, just that we remembered that one tradition that they really
Well, then
like.
it's comforting, right?
Yeah, it is comforting. I think there's something comforting. And even though they only started that tradition when they were 18, they've come to expect it. And they can count on that consistency in their life, right? Where things have been inconsistent. So I love that.
Well, we were talking about maybe in this Christmas or next Christmas doing an experience instead of all the Christmas gifts and things, maybe going to Disney World as a family or something. And one of my girls, when we proposed the question, said, "But are we still going to do pajamas and books?"
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, we're going to the Magic Kingdom in our pajamas, baby.
We'll all match.
We'll get footies that year.
Right. And this was one of our girls that came to us after the age of 18. And that's how important those things become.
Yeah.
When they feel it's a visual representation of being one as a family. Yeah. When you all have the same book or you all have the same pajamas, even the same T-shirt. It doesn't matter. It's just this visual representation that we belong together. So
you know how because when you're talking about that, it's this idea that we belong together, and Kayla's like there's comfort in that. You know how in times of trouble, you've got the Bible, like Jeremiah 29:11, right? And you hit some rough seas in your life, and with Jeremiah 29:11, people really want to cling to that, or other verses like that, right? And then we have comfort verses in the Bible. We have comfort food. That when you're struggling, there are just certain things that you like to eat because it reminds you of something. Tradition's kind of like relational comfort food, right? It's like the biscuits and gravy of relationship. That's what traditions are.
Yes, absolutely. And I love biscuits and gravy. I'm from Kentucky.
Profound.
Well, hey, the lady's from Kentucky and lives in Georgia. I knew that biscuits and gravy comfort food reference would resonate. Am I right, Pam?
Yes, it resonated. Made me hungry.
Made me wish I'd had biscuits and gravy for breakfast.
Yes,
right. The problem is I'm gluten free.
Oh,
so
that makes
now
it
I have to
really
think about it all day. Thanks, Ryan.
Boy, that smile turned to a frown pretty quick.
Oh my goodness.
That's funny. So I have one question.
Yes.
So have you ever had any of your kiddos push back on traditions that you were trying to implement or that you already had in place when they came home?
Well, I wouldn't say that I necessarily had them push back on it. I mean, of course, the sons-in-laws have kind of pushed back a little bit on the matching pajamas.
I'm with your sons-in-law on this, by the way.
As am I.
Dallas is nodding.
So, but they did it. They did it to honor me. But
I love that.
Not really push back as much as be uncomfortable. Obviously, the first time that you do it, we've had years at Christmas when it's time to take the pajama pictures that there's an absence, like somebody that should be here is downstairs, or
right.
Just things like that have happened. But because it's uncomfortable, especially if you haven't come from that or experienced that.
Right.
And it's so funny because so many of our girls, we look like an ad for the United Nations because we're so multicultural.
Yeah. And your Benetton commercial in the making.
Right.
We're all old enough to remember what you're talking about.
Right.
Right. Nobody else is going to get that reference.
Yeah, just Google the United Colors of Benetton and you'll find something on YouTube, I'm sure.
B-E in two N's or it's two T's, I think.
Beneton, I think. I'm sorry, Pam. We really didn't mean to interrupt the story with
no, that's okay.
Spelling Benetton. We'll put it in the show notes.
That's right. There you
go. But two of my daughters are Asian, and they laugh at the pajama tradition because they're like, that's such a white thing. And, so it's funny because you're not only, you can think of it culturally, like literally like Asian culture versus white Southern culture, or you can think of it in the culture of, it doesn't matter that we're not physically the same culture, but if you are raised differently, even if you look like me and you come into our home, you're coming into a new culture.
Yeah.
And we have to be very aware of that as families, that that the fabric of our family changes in this way, that we honor and give dignity to the new member of our family by, not just springing things on them, helping them to understand. I mean, a lot of this goes back into the TBRI stuff that we all know about transitions. Like anything like that is also a transition. I mean, we have intentionally transitioned our new kiddos into those family moments. Yeah. And even in doing that, we still have those that are like, I don't know about this, even though we've talked about it for months.
I can imagine, like, we've never done the pajama thing, but if I just went and got matching pajamas this year, my kids would be like, this is odd. And they've been in our family for a long time, right?
Your husband would be like, this is odd.
I think they would think it was odd, but I think if we continued to do it, that they would embrace it as a new tradition, right? So But if I just sprung it on them Christmas Eve and said, all of you need to go put these on, they would be like, no, not putting these on. You have lost
your mind.
Yes. But if I show them to them maybe, a month before Christmas, because I may or may not have looked into that already this year, I could, potentially not have the same pushback. My husband's giving me a funny look.
No, I'm like, you'll still get the same pushback from one of us.
I think we got, in our house, we've never done like the entire family in matching pajamas.
But like the kids.
But like, I think we got 2 years of the 3 kids, and then the oldest was kind of like, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. And it just wasn't worth the fight with him after that. So, but we've always done like, Kelly has always wanted to do like a picture of the boys by the tree on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're not in all matching pajamas. And so that's kind of like one of those little neat traditions that just kind of cropped up in our house. So
talk about Christmas traditions. I'm from the Southern Hemisphere, where Christmas is in the middle of summer. And so having it be cold still after 25 years still seems like a little odd to me. Like we didn't go to the beach on Christmas Day last year, which seemed odd to me because we'd do that a lot growing up. And, Santa at the mall would have like Bermuda shorts, a Hawaiian shirt, sandals, and a Santa hat with a surfboard. So that's kind of, so this whole, I'm like, yeah, sure, if we want to put Hawaiian shirts on for Christmas, that's fine. But pajamas.
Maybe that'll be our tradition. We'll do Hawaiian
there you go,
shirts
Kayla,
for
he
Christmas.
Just gave it to you.
Of course, we can't edit this out. And if any of you mention it, I'll just say, you know what, they just made that up.
Did not say
Go
that.
back to the podcast. I never said it.
Well, we started the podcast by saying, that we're empty nesters now. And the other night when we were having dinner, we were talking about Christmas traditions. And I was telling David, Lisa, and Ryan that a lot of our girls want to stay all night on Christmas Eve. They asked to come and spend the night because they want to get their pajamas on Christmas Eve and wake up and put them on and have them on all day long.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting when you build something into your family that just becomes normal.
Yeah.
How much as adults, because my kids are now adults and out of the house, how much they still cling on to those things because they mean something to them. Even if they are snarling their nose and saying, I don't want to do this right now, one day it will mean something.
Yeah.
Well, I think you just gave Kayla some tactical advice there on how to implement this, because when she tells our children, if you wear pajamas, you can wear pajamas all day, all resistance dropped. They will sign up for that.
You don't have to put on any fancy clothes. You can wear just your matching pajamas. They'll think that's cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks for listening to the first of 3 episodes of our conversation with Pam Parish. If you'd like more information, you can find it on her website at pamparish.com. On the next episode, we're going to talk with Pam about how she and Steve founded Connections Homes and how that's impacting the lives of young adults in the foster care system in Atlanta.